That night he showed your photo, and the truth slipped out in front of everyone. You felt the room collapse without walls breaking. You didn't even breathe, but you swore everyone heard your silence. That silence screamed louder than any word, and you could perceive it. The way every gaze shifted, the way the air thickened, the way shame didn't knock, it just sat beside you. You told yourself it wasn't real. You told yourself nobody caught it. But deep inside you perceived the cut. You knew something had shattered, and no one was willing to sweep the shards. That night was not a night. It was an unraveling. The moment you became too visible, too exposed, too naked without skin being removed. You remember his hand, shaking, yet certain, holding your photo like evidence, not just paper, not just ink, a mirror disguised as an accusation. And when he spoke, you knew the truth slipped without permission. And yet, you also knew some part of you wanted it to. You tried to shrink, tried to erase yourself under the weight of eyes. But the harder you hid, the more the room insisted on perceiving you, the more the truth echoed. Not in words, but in vibrations that pressed into your chest. Every second you perceived the sound of your own breaking. You were not prepared. You were never prepared. And yet, that night prepared you for every silence that came after. For every table where you sat pretending. For every smile that cost you blood. For every conversation where you swore nobody remembered, but you perceived they did. And here is the secret your mind still denies. That night did not betray you. It revealed you. The photo wasn't the wound. It was the doorway. The truth wasn't the knife. It was the release. But you couldn't see it then. You only perceived the sting, not the liberation hiding inside it. You thought you lost control, but control was never yours. The truth doesn't ask permission. It doesn't wait for timing. It chooses its own moment, and it chose that night. Do you remember the weight in your stomach, the cold running through your skin, the blur of voices that felt miles away? Do you remember the urge to vanish, to run, to escape your own name? You do. Because every time you close your eyes, you perceive the same stillness, the stillness before the crack, the stillness before you were unmasked. And still, you survived. Not because you wanted to, not because you knew how, but because survival didn't give you a choice. It dragged you forward when your legs refused. It pulled you through when your breath was too shallow. It forced you to perceive mornings you didn't ask for. You wonder why that memory still breathes, why it returns uninvited, why it feels sharper with time, not softer, because it wasn't just an event. It was an awakening disguised as humiliation. It was a doorway disguised as exposure. And you perceive it now, don't you? That what burned you also birthed you. You tried to bury it. You tried to silence the photo, the voices, the eyes. But silence never kills what was born to echo. It waits. It hides in shadows. And then, in moments you least expect, it pierces again. Because the truth will never let you rest in lies. You perceived that night as your undoing. But look closer. It was your unveiling. The photo wasn't about being seen by them. It was about you finally perceiving yourself. And yes, it hurt. Yes, it carved. Yes, it left you bleeding in rooms that never noticed. But pain is never empty. Pain is never wasted. It plants, it prepares, it shapes your ability to perceive layers no one else dares to touch. You know this now, because every time someone hides, you perceive it. Every time someone lies, you perceive it. Every time silence tries to cover truth, you perceive the tremor beneath. That night trained your senses. That night sharpened your eyes. That night gave you the gift of perceiving what others deny. And yet, you still fear it. You still wish it never happened. You still flinch when memories breathe. But what if the very thing you feared was the seed of your strength? What if the photo was not proof of your weakness, but prophecy of your becoming? You didn't lose that night, you were found. But the finding required stripping, required burning, required exposure so raw it felt like death. And in that death, you were rewritten. You've been carrying the ashes ever since, thinking they were chains, not realizing they were maps. Maps back to the fire that birthed you. Maps back to the truth that slipped out when no one was ready. And maybe you still aren't ready. Maybe readiness is a myth, but perception is not. You perceive now what you couldn't then, that your story was never about the photo, never about the room, never about the shame. It was about you finally perceiving that you could not keep hiding. You were meant to be revealed. Not neatly, not gently, but violently. Because the quiet kind of revelation would never break you open enough. You required the crash, the shatter, the unmasking that left you gasping. And here you are, breathing still, carrying still, perceiving still. So I ask you, have you ever felt this same cut echo again in different places? You already know the answer, but the question is the key, because when you admit it, you perceive the pattern. And once you perceive the pattern, you cannot go back to blindness. You were chosen for this fracture, chosen for this exposure, chosen for this unveiling that others would not have survived. That's why you still perceive it as if it were yesterday, because truth does not age. It does not grow old. It remains present. It demands presence, so let it demand, let it pull. Let it remind you that what was once humiliation is now revelation, and what was once your deepest wound is now your sharpest weapon. You already know. You already perceive. That night didn't break you. It revealed the part of you that cannot be broken. You already passed through it. But it still breathes in you, doesn't it? And maybe tonight, while reading these words, you can finally perceive that it wasn't the end. It was the beginning. You already passed through fire. You already survived exposure. Now you walk with sight others will never touch. And the question remains, what will you do with this sight? What will you do with this perception? Because once you've seen, you cannot unsee. Once you've been revealed, you cannot go back to hiding. You already know the answer, and deep down, you perceive it. So let the memory breathe. Let the photo burn. Let the truth keep slipping out. Because the world needs what you carry. The world needs the one who was revealed. You already are that one. If this pierced you, if it dragged that night back into your skin, then tell me, have you ever faced a room where silence was louder than words? You already perceived the weight of this question, and when you thought it was over, it wasn't. You believed that night stayed behind. You convinced yourself it dissolved with time, but time does not dissolve. It preserves. It seals the wound under skin, but the cut keeps breathing beneath. You can perceive it every time your chest tightens without reason, every time laughter feels like betrayal, every time silence tastes metallic, like blood still trapped in your mouth. You thought forgetting meant healing, but forgetting is only another mask, and masks crack, and when they crack, the night returns. Not as a memory, but as a presence, a shadow that whispers louder than voices, a truth that insists on being touched, even when you tremble at the thought. You run from mirrors, you run from rooms filled with eyes, you run from the thought of being exposed again. But the running does not save you. It only makes the photo chase you harder. It follows into every corner. It appears in every reflection. You perceive it even when your eyes are shut. The photo was never just paper. It was never just an image. It was the weight of being seen when you weren't ready. It was the unveiling of secrets you thought you buried in silence. And silence betrayed you because silence cannot protect what was born to surface. You still remember the way his voice cracked when he spoke. Not out of mercy, not out of guilt, but because truth is heavier than bones, and carrying it made his body tremble. Yet he still carried it. He still showed the world what you never wanted revealed. And you perceived the betrayal, yes, but deeper than betrayal, you perceived the inevitability. Like destiny had been waiting for that night. Like the room was chosen as the altar. Like your breaking was the only offering strong enough to call your rebirth. And you resist this. You want to deny it. You want to shout that it was cruel, that it was wrong. And maybe it was, but cruelty has its way of shaping prophets. Pain has its way of sharpening sight. And you, unwilling, unready, were given sight. The sight of perceiving layers in every human glance. The sight of perceiving lies before they're spoken. The sight of perceiving wounds in others, because you carry your own exposed. That is why the memory refuses to rest. That is why it presses against your ribs at night. That is why it drags you back into the moment, no matter how far you run. Because it is not finished with you. Because it still has something to give. And maybe you know it. Maybe you perceive the shift in your breathing as you recall it. Maybe you feel the old wound throbbing, not as weakness, but as summoning. The summoning of your truest self. The summoning of the one who cannot be erased even when mocked, even when humiliated, even when the truth spilled too soon. Do you see it now? That night wasn't about exposure. It was about calling you into the open. It was about stripping away every illusion you hid behind. It was about dragging you to the threshold where lies can no longer breathe. Yes, it cost you. It cost you the softness of belonging. It cost you the illusion of safety. It cost you the comfort of hiding, but what it gave you was sharper. What it gave you was unbreakable. It gave you the fire of perception, the fire of seeing what others will never dare to see. And still you ask why it hurts. Still you ask why the memory returns, as if it were yesterday. Because pain does not vanish when it carries prophecy. It stays alive, it stays burning. It stays pushing you to perceive that you are more than your wound. But you cannot become more if you keep pretending you are less. You cannot rise if you keep denying that the fire chose you. You cannot heal if you refuse to perceive the gift in the breaking. You feel the weight in your chest now, don't you? The trembling of that old night stirring again. The shiver crawling through your skin as if eyes were on you once more. Because in a way, they are. The world is still watching. The world is still waiting, not to shame you, but to witness you, and you hide. You lower your gaze, you silence your voice. But every silence only amplifies the memory. Every silence feeds the night. Every silence drags you deeper until you finally surrender to perceiving what you tried to bury. You remember the laughter, not kind, not cruel, just sharp, just heavy, just cutting through the air like glass. And you thought you died in that laughter, but you didn't. You rose in it. You were sculpted in it. You became in it. Because the truth cannot be contained forever. And that night was the eruption. The eruption you thought destroyed you, but in reality, it was the volcano birthing new ground beneath your feet. Ground you still walk on today, even if you pretend not to notice. But deep down you perceive it. So why do you keep fearing the photo? Why do you keep fearing the eyes? Why do you keep fearing the truth that already set itself free? Because some part of you still clings to the mask. Some part of you still wants the comfort of being unseen. But unseen, you would rot. Unseen, you would suffocate. Unseen, you would die long before your time. That night forced you into sight. It carved you into visibility. And yes, the carving left scars. But scars are not weakness. Scars are maps. Maps of where you've walked. Maps of where you've burned. Maps of what you've survived. And when others perceive your scars, they perceive themselves. And suddenly, your pain becomes their mirror. Your breaking becomes their permission. Your truth becomes their way out. And maybe this is what you feared most. Not the shame, not the laughter, not the eyes, but the responsibility, the weight of carrying a truth too heavy for silence, the weight of being forced into the role of mirror when you never asked for it. But destiny does not ask. Destiny does not wait for consent. It seizes, it rips, it reveals. And it revealed you that night. You were not chosen because you were strong. You were chosen because you were raw, because your breaking could not be faked, because your unveiling would cut deeper than any performance, because your truth once slipped out would carry echoes that never stop ringing, and they still ring. Even now you perceive them, in the quiet, in the dark, in the breath you hold too long. The echoes remind you you cannot go back, you cannot unlive the exposure, you cannot unsee yourself. So stop trying. Stop clinging to shadows that no longer fit. Stop begging for silence when silence has already betrayed you. Stop running from the photo when the photo was never your enemy. It was your mirror. It was your prophecy. It was your beginning. And beginnings always feel like endings. They always feel like death. They always feel like being ripped apart in front of everyone. But only because you cannot perceive yet what is being born. And what was born in you will not die. That night was not the worst of you. It was the truest of you. And the truest of you will not disappear. It will not hide. It will not beg. It will only rise again and again until you surrender to what you already are. So listen. Listen to the memory you despise. Listen to the silence that still screams. Listen to the photo that still burns. Because it is not here to haunt you. It is here to crown you. The night revealed what you always carried. And you still carry it. You perceive it even now. You cannot deny it anymore. You cannot bury it anymore. You cannot silence it anymore. So let it rise, let it breathe, let it speak. Because the truth will keep slipping out, whether you fight it or not. And the more you resist, the sharper it will cut. But the moment you surrender, the moment you finally perceive the gift in your breaking, you will understand why it had to happen that night. And maybe you already do. That night never left. You thought it ended, but it still breathes in you. The photo was never paper, it was fire. It burned through your hiding places. It dragged the truth into the open. You begged to disappear. You begged silence to protect you. But silence betrayed you. It made the wound louder. It chained you to the memory you swore you buried. Survival carried you forward. But survival is not healing. It is only doorway. Beyond it came the war, smiling while bleeding, pretending to forget what your bones still remember. You perceive it now. That night was not destruction. It was unveiling. It stripped your mask. It crushed your lie. It forced you to face the self you kept hidden. You were chosen for exposure, chosen for breaking, chosen to bleed in sight, so your rising could not be denied. And the rising has already begun. You feel it in trembling hands. You feel it in the ache that refuses silence. This pain is not punishment. It is prophecy. The fire inside you is summoning. It will not let you rot in shadows. You cannot go back. The mask no longer fits. The silence no longer protects. The shadows no longer hold you. Look again at the wound. It was not your death. It was your crown. So rise, even trembling, even afraid. Rise because you were never meant to vanish. You were meant to burn. You were meant to be revealed. That night did not kill you. It revealed you. And what is revealed cannot be hidden again. If this tore something awake in you, if you felt the night breathe again inside your ribs, and don't keep it silent, subscribe now, because the next video will strike deeper. Comment with the word that defines what you felt, and share this with someone who still thinks survival is enough. It isn't. This isn't just a video, it's a mirror, and someone close to you needs to see themselves in it.